All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Club. I hope you guys are having a great day wherever you are. As always, it's Friday here. So we're bringing that Friday energy. It is nice and cold here in Seattle. It's been like 27 degrees. And my family has foregone our coffee trips. We usually go on a walk to the coffee shop in the morning, and it's just been too damn cold. So we haven't gone. And so we're sitting here without coffee. It's rough, but we're getting through it. Speaking of cold weather, we got a guest, Otis Odell, with us on the podcast today from Denver. So he is well acquainted with cold weather. Otis focuses on modular housing and affordable housing in the U.S. He is an architect with plenty of experience. I'm super excited to jump into this. It'll probably be a little bit more technical on the development side, so it should be pretty interesting. Otis, thanks for hopping on the show.
Glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I told you before we got on here, we always like starting with stories. We like to hear how people got to where they are. I know you don't specifically invest in real estate, but you are real estate adjacent, being an architect. And so why don't you tell us your story, how you got into architecture and how it's gone since then?
Wow, that's a long story because I've been around for a while, but I'll jump in. So I knew very early in my life and in high school, frankly, that architecture was the path I planned to take. And so I took a gap year. I was in the construction side, learning about how to put things together, went to college and did all the things that you need to do, became a licensed architect fairly young at age 26 and jumped into the job market. Went through that, and in 1995, several decades ago now, I started my own business and had my own company, architecture company, based in Denver for 16 years, and did mostly housing work. Along the way, I had some experience with modular construction that was based on a developer wanting to build in the mountains, and the short building season that happens in the mountains prompted this developer to say, let's build this stuff in a factory so we can put it together quickly, because in the mountain towns, especially if it's a ski town, you have to be off the road in November and you can't get back on until April. So it prompted this whole modular thing. And that started my experience in modular. After 16 years with my own company, I sold that company and moved to California and joined a company called HED. That's where I am today. HED is a larger company with 400 plus people. We have offices around the country. My role is leading the housing and mixed use sector for the firm across the country. So now I'm back in Denver where I can get to all of our offices very easily, and we're still engaged in some modular work.
Perfect, man. Well, that is
Long answer to your question.
no, I love it. 16 years running your own firm. I'm sure you had plenty of stories going through there. So yeah, let's just hop right into the topic, modular housing. When we first started talking, my mind immediately went to mobile home parks because that's what I invest in. And so I was thinking mobile home parks, but you kind of corrected me. So why don't you first lay the groundwork and tell us what is modular housing?
From my standpoint, modular housing is very different than mobile home parks. I think that's called manufactured housing or something.
Hmm.
There's some nomenclature that's different. So modular housing is housing that is built in a factory. It can be built from wood, it can be built from metal stud framing, and it is built so that it can be loaded on a truck and travel across the road to get to a particular project site. And then these modules are stacked, and the ultimate result is a multifamily building. And there's so many advantages. I don't know if you want to get into the advantages at this point. I
Yeah.
would say that, first of all, you're building inside of a building. It's an assembly line. It is almost like, an old time assembly line for an automobile where you build a chassis, a frame, a floor, frame walls. you're doing all of it in a controlled environment. There's no rain, there's no snow, there's no wind, there's no freezing temperatures. A worker can position themselves above their work in a more advantageous position. So it ends up being, in some regards, safer. And it has a higher level of quality because it's not getting wet. It's in a very controlled environment. And it's done with a certain amount of standardization. So the workforce is very familiar with what they're doing because it's somewhat repeatable. I mean, not that every single modular project is identical, it's certainly not. However, there are a lot of standardized features, and there's many plants across the country where this activity takes place. I actually worked for one summer as I was coming up through the ranks in a modular factory, so I built them. So that's the essence of it. I think that additional advantages for a developer and for the real estate business is that you can shave significant amount of time off of a schedule.
Hmm.
So, well, you have to design things up front, and while the modules are being built in the factory, work can be proceeding in the field where you're doing all the site work, putting the utilities, and I'm referencing multifamily projects, projects that are, 40 to 200 and more units. Okay. And they're typically rental apartments.
Yep.
So now you are doing all the site work, you're putting the utilities in place, you're putting foundations in place, whatever that foundation might be. Sometimes it might be a simple slab on grade. Sometimes it might be a concrete parking structure that's being put in place so that when that is completed, the modules are showing up on site
Right.
and can be stacked. So you might
So it's
shave.
happening concurrently. You're
It's
doing the groundwork, the foundation, and then you're also simultaneously building the actual units, the living units.
That's right. You're framing the units while you're pouring foundations.
Yeah.
So you can shave 30 to 40% off of off of a schedule. And for the investor who might be considering, investment in a modular delivery system, you get to market faster and you start collecting rents faster.
Right.
And so the economic
And your
upside,
holding costs are lower because if you have a 40% longer development time, that means that you still have that loan and it's still ticking away.
that's right.
Um,
So you're paying interest that much longer. That's exactly right.
so my question, the schedule part makes a lot of sense to me. Obviously, you can just go in there, slap them down, put siding on it, put a roof on it, seal it up, and you're good to go, which is a lot quicker than having to build it all on site. But I would think there would also be cost benefits because there, as you mentioned, there's a standardized process. The person who's building these, in my mind, it would cost less to build a unit in a a warehouse than it would to build on site. Is there like a cost per square foot benefit to building a modular or buying a modular multifamily unit, or how does it work out there?
It's a good question. I think it can vary, and I am aware of many examples where you have the developer, if you will, at the end of the day, has saved some cost in the actual construction. If you think about it, you're still buying the same pieces of wood and the same flooring and the same kind of products that go into a multifamily building. However, in a factory setting, depending on the volume that they generate, they can get a supply chain and get preferential
Mm-hmm.
buying, right?
Yeah.
So they can buy 1,000 cabinet packages, whereas on site, let's say you're building a 150 unit apartment building, you're buying 150, depending on the contractor's.
Well, and it's in a warehouse, and so you're just you got semis just coming up to a dock, unloading the stuff. It's secure in a building. It's not out there. It's not gated. People aren't stealing it. And so I don't
That's
know.
all right. It's all
For
correct.
in my mind, it would just there there would be a cost benefit for the developer. So just thinking of somebody who maybe they got this really good piece of land on the outskirts of town. It's zone multifamily. They're like, great, I want to put 40 units here. In They would choose a modular home not only because of time, but also because it would save them money.
That's correct. It really is true. Think about all of the pieces, the wood, all the products, the screws, the nails. I mean, if you are delivering all of that on site, you're outdoors, it's vulnerable. The work it takes to manage all of those different materials is done by a construction crew. And when you're delivering all of that to a factory, it can be much more organized and much more manageable in terms of maintaining inventory and monitoring it. So you're absolutely correct. There are opportunities to save dollars.
Yeah. And you also mentioned that there is standardization in the construction. My question is there customization? So if I want to build a 40 unit multifamily complex, what liberties can I take in the design of the units, like in the layout? Is it all how customizable is it, and how standardized is it?
It's customizable. The economy does come with a certain level of standardization.
Hmm.
So what I've heard from factories is that if we only have 7 or 8 module types, we can generate 11,000 square feet per day. I'm kind of
Yeah.
making up some numbers to
Yeah.
make an example. If there's a lot of variation and there are 17 or 18 module types, we may only be able to build 7,000 square feet a day.
Yeah.
So those are the consequences. However, I think it is important to be able to customize. Not every developer is going to want the same package of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it is important for the industry to be able to customize, change, create different light fixtures, create different floor finishes. What is locked in as much as anything is the dimension of the
Mm.
module
Mm.
so that
Okay.
it can be shipped.
Yeah.
So you try to avoid wide load permits and all those kinds of things. I mean, in California, for example, you get above a certain width, you have to have a police escort. That's
Oh,
very
geez.
expensive, right? So you really want to be thinking about what your length and width is so that you can effectively ship it. And those are less customizable, still customizable, but less.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if you are restricted by length and width, that would make, in my mind, that would mean that you're also restricted on unit size and bed bath combinations. I'm assuming you got your studios, you got your one bed, one bath, two bed, one bath. Are you able to construct three bed, four bed, two bath? What is the mix of bed baths that you're able to do?
You absolutely can. And the way it's done, if you think about a typical multifamily apartment building, what we call a central loaded corridor. So there's a corridor, 6 foot wide corridor, and there are units on either side of that corridor.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, how it's built is from one outside wall to the other outside wall. So you're building a module, a corridor, and another module, and it's one thing that you ship. Okay.
Okay.
Now you put it by another module and you can connect side to side. So
Okay.
now you can connect as many as you want as you want to, right? And get everything from studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom. Absolutely.
Got it. Okay. So that's actually not how I had pictured it. So the corridor is included in the construction. I had thought that you would construct a unit, a one bed, one bath unit, and then that would be placed on site, and then you would build the corridor on site. But it sounds like that's already in the construction once it's delivered.
You could do it either way. The most efficient way is to include the corridor and the unit across the hall. And then what happens is the corridor has a certain is unfinished in some ways. And that's where you go to connect the plumbing and the electrical and the vertical pieces. So the
Mm-hmm.
corridor is left open with access panels where you can make these connections. You have to carefully design the interior so that your plumbing's near those walls and all that sort of thing. Generally, what you try to do is you try to keep the trades out of the unit, right? So the unit's completely finished. It's got its flooring, it's got its cabinets, it's all done. And as soon as you let a construction worker in there with a tool belt and tools and all kinds of stuff, guess what? It gets a little boogered up. So you try to keep the construction trades out of the unit and have all the connections made in the corridor.
That makes a lot of sense. You want to keep the trades out of the corridor or out of the units, and then just have them do the connection. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
So, in terms of zoning, permitting, that kind of thing, is there are there any restrictions? Are there any? I mean, have you heard of any municipalities who are like, no, we do not want this, or do they? Does is it basically the same as a site built construction?
Well, in terms of zoning and municipalities and the authorities having jurisdiction, there's a lot of education that is sometimes required for those authorities because they're just not used to it. And
Hmm.
here's how it works. A modular unit that is built in a factory is actually permitted by the state that it is in.
Oh,
So it's a state permit. All of the site work components, and the putting together of the modules is a local building department. So now there are some nuances. It's very helpful if you've gone through it a few times to understand this. So what you do is you create a set of documents, and let's say I'll try to be simple with this, and it's got the whole set of drawings, and on one set you might gray out the site built components of the work and highlight the modular components and ship that off to the state or state agency for permitting. Vice versa, when you're going into this local municipality, sort of block out the modular components of the project, highlight what's site built, and get that permitted. So generally, the local jurisdiction does not approve or need to permit the modular component. The part that shows up on a truck is already permitted.
hmm. That's
So,
makes
but in
sense.
terms of zoning, if it's zoned multifamily, uh, generally we don't see restrictions. What happens, of course, is many places, depending on the demographic and um, all sorts of other things, you might have a design review board. And I think the immediate perception of a modular built building is it's going to be pretty basic. It's going to be very rectangular. It's going to, look like a modular building. And it is not the case. There are a lot of opportunities to, especially generally, what we like to do is apply the exterior finish in the field. So you can have brick in some locations and you can have different material combinations. You can move modules back and forth and in and out to get the articulation. You can include balconies. You can do the kinds of things that you would do in another project. So generally, we don't see it's too challenging to get through a design review board because we can certainly get very close to um, the type of award-winning work that we would do as site built, similar to what we would do in a factory built situation. Clearly, it helps when the site has more regular geometry and it fits that kind of thing. We're not going to be doing curved walls. We're certainly there are criteria you look at very carefully to make sure it's applicable and appropriate for a modular delivery.
Yeah. Um, how about let's talk about size? You mentioned that you guys do, 40 to 200. What about on the smaller size, especially like here in Tacoma? Dadus are super popular because they just basically lifted all restrictions for certain lot size. I think it was 10,000 square foot lot. Anybody can put a dadu. So do you guys go down to, I guess if it's a modular home, you don't really, well, I mean, there would still be a benefit to build it off site and bring it. So do you guys go down to single units, to duplexes, triplexes, or is the 40 unit kind of the minimum that you do?
That's more a business decision than it is a practical decision. You can certainly do single family homes. You can certainly do duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. Absolutely. I don't know what a dadu is, but what we
Yeah, it's a detached
we
detached unit. Yeah.
yeah, so what we have all over the country is what we call ADU, which is an
Mm.
accessory dwelling unit. And a lot of municipalities across the country have allowed those to happen. And I think it's a great solution, frankly, for something in you might put in your backyard
Yep.
to either rent or potentially uh, age in place and ultimately move in and have a caregiver occupy the main house or have a caregiver occupy the accessory dwelling unit or again just additional income to rent to a college student or a senior couple or something along those lines. So you can scale all over the place.
Yeah.
Typically in our business model, we're a larger firm. We uh, recognize that the effort for smaller projects is about the same as it is for bigger projects. It's not proportional necessarily to the fees that you can get and all that kind of thing. So, uh, from a business standpoint, we prefer to have a kind of a minimum size, but it certainly is applicable. I mean, right now you can go to Amazon and buy one, right? You can go to Amazon today and buy a modular kind of mini house. Now, this is not what I've been talking about. This is not, a unit, a corridor, and a unit. This is an individual unit that might be in keeping with how we would define a tiny home. Although I would say that you could get a very comfortable one bedroom unit. You can go to Amazon and have it delivered within a few weeks. I mean, obviously, you got to have your foundation, you got to have your utility connections, but that's where we've gotten to as sort of a extension, if you will, of the modular industry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I've in our parks that we own, we have considered not specifically the Amazon ones, but essentially those types of units like boxable.
Yeah,
We
right.
I actually did look into the Amazon ones because some of them are just so cheap. They're like $20,000 to get a unit. Um,
Crazy, isn't it? Yeah,
it is
that's
it's so
crazy.
cheap. And considering, if you put it in a mobile home park, you rent it out for, $450, $500 a month. That can pay itself off pretty quickly. What I've found in my analysis is that the quality for those units, especially on Amazon, is just not there.
I
And
see.
I'm still tempted because it is just $20,000. 20,000 still 20,000, but it I've been tempted to just buy one, put it in a park, and just see myself.
See
But
what happens.
yeah, well, I haven't done it yet. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. But
I think it's really amazing, for example, just the small time investor,
yep,
right? To buy such a product. And if maybe you are someone who has a couple of houses or you have a couple of duplexes and you are realizing some passive income and that's an investment for you at a relatively small scale, right? I think the idea of this modular solution where you can bring a very nice living unit. I think you're right. You have to really look at the quality. It's not just Amazon. There are other factories, of course, who can help you do this, and you can find different kinds of products online that might range from 50,000 to 100,000. Still, over time, if you're in it for, 10 years or longer or whatever it is, I think the payback is there. I think you'll get return on investment.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, I haven't done it myself yet, but I'll probably at one point pull the trigger and just see how it goes. So I'll let you know how that goes once it's done.
Jump in, brother.
There you go. All right, man. Well, that rounds out our time. Usually we jump into the quick question round at this point, but since you don't specifically focus on investments, we're going to forego that and skip to the very last question in that round, which is about you, your company, and what you guys offer. So why don't you tell the guests if they're interested in your guys' products, interested in maybe doing a development, a modular development on a site that they have, how can they find you? How can they reach out to you? And then what can they expect when they reach out?
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that. So the name of the company is HED. It's been in business since 1908. We are about 400 people across the country, as I mentioned. We have engineering and architecture. We're about 70% architecture, 30% engineering. We do work in multiple sectors. So we are not only in housing, we're in education and mission critical and many other sectors as well, healthcare, for example. Uh, HED.design. And if you go to that website, you can find me. I'm Otis Odell. My phone number and email address are there, and I would love to hear from you if there's any interest in talking more about modular solutions or any other multifamily solutions. I manage that practice for the firm across the country, so I have a national reach. We have team members in Boston to San Francisco, Detroit to Los Angeles, Denver, Dallas, in the middle of the country. We're glad to help you.
Perfect. I will put that link in the show notes. Again, that's hed.design. So if you guys want to reach out, just go to that website, look up Otis Odell, grab his phone number, his email, whatever it is, and reach out. All right, man. Well, that wraps it up. Thank you very much for hopping on the show.
Thank you, Gabe. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. For everybody who's with us today, thank you guys for showing up. You are the reason we do this. So if you guys have any questions whatsoever, reach out to me, Gabe at therealestateinvestingclub.com. If you guys want to support the show, just leave us a review on Apple or whatever you're listening to this on. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great week. Keep rocking real estate, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.